The news, of course, today, the big news, we've talked about it through the course of the afternoon. You'll hear some of Francois Legault's speech, by the way, coming up at about 5:20. So, yes, Francois Legault, if you're just turning us on today, resigned as Quebec Premier in a press conference hastily called this morning at about 11 o'clock. By the way, not that it matters, but I just thought I'd point out that the entire speech was in French. I don't believe there was any English in there. I would have settled for a thank you, but I don't believe there was any English in there, but that's fine. I'm just bringing that up. Interestingly enough, Scott Reid, CTV political analyst, is going to join us in a second here, was on the show last week, and Scott Reid said this.
I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to say by the 30th of April, I believe that Francois Legault will concede to gravity, to reality, to the inexorable tides of time, and he will resign. I think Drainville will probably end up being his replacement. He'll be picked sometime in June or July, and then we'll have the election, and I think CAC is just going to get absolutely drummed. My unsolicited bold prediction for 2026 is that despite his protestations, Legault will concede to reality and step down by late spring.
Missed it by that much. Scott Reid is on the line. Scott, congratulations. Nice job.
If only I'd said by the 30th of January, you would have thought I was a true prognosticator. But, yeah, I just, let's face it. You go away for the holidays. You take a look at the numbers. You get a new poll at the beginning of January, just when you're thinking, I'll put a tie on today, head into the office, be premier. And the poll says you're at 11%. In your stronghold at Quebec City, you're at 17%. You're like, man, my goose is cooked. It's time to go. So I just think there was an air of an inevitability about this, and so I'm not surprised, obviously.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't remember this, but in the clip we just played, you also not only predicted he would resign, you predict who his successor is going to be in Bernard Drainville. And we've talked to a bunch of different people today, trying to get some names in there. His name is one of them. Why do you think, why him specifically, Scott?
You know what? I could be dead wrong, but the reason I think it'll be Drainville is that I think that Drainville, I've known him for a long time when I knew him, I shouldn't say I know him, like it's not like we're buddies or anything like that, but I knew him and worked with him when he was a journalist in Ottawa 25, 30 years ago. And, I just think if you look at the arc of his career, he's an ambitious guy. This is the best opportunity, maybe the last opportunity he's going to have to lead a party. And I think he looks at it and he says, hey, you know what? I could take a kick at this camp. So that would be my guess. And I think he's one of the bigger names in the province. And he has the Keith pedigree, right? I think if you're the CAC, you're looking at it right now and you go, when we look at what kind of candidate we want, what's on their resume, I think you want somebody who has Keith's pedigree, because then you can say I can draw from that voter pool. So that's my guess. But I don't know. There's lots of, names are popping up all over the place. Although I have to say, and I know I'm a bit removed from Quebec politics, but none of these names are, the question is there a CAC Carney? Is there somebody that can swoop in and reverse fortunes in the way that we saw happen federally in the aftermath of Trudeau's resignation? And it doesn't feel like that. Maybe I'm wrong. It shuffles the deck, but it doesn't feel like there's an outsider who totally resets the political compass in the way that Carney was able to.
Yeah, I don't think that, who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe that person is there. It's not obvious to me who that person would be. A lot of names have been bandied about, a couple of them, Geneviève Guilbeault, who's our transport minister, but I can't see that happening. Apparently, one of our analysts said she is going ahead and, talking to people about doing this, but she is tied to the Cyclic scandal. There's going to be a commission report. The Gallant Commission is coming out with that. That's only going to make things worse, not better. We had another report just yesterday, actually, showing how much money had been wasted. She was the transport minister at the time. So I don't know how far that goes. My other question would be, and I'm curious for your take on this, Charles Milliard, who is in all likelihood going to be the leader of the Provincial Liberal Party, this is good news for him, bad news for him, or is this worse news for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who at least thought he knew who he'd be going up against in an election? Now, Francois Legault's gone. He's left without an easy punching bag.
Oh, no question. No question. This is unwelcome news for Petit Québécois, because you say, well, we want the weakest possible opponent. And, they got themselves into a situation where they were almost unelectable, the CAC and Legault. So, you you look at it and you have to say, uh-oh. I'll tell you a story. This is a million years ago. I remember the summer of 1993, I should say, summer of 1993. And Brian Mulroney had stepped down as leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister. Chrétien was way ahead in the polls, right? Kim Campbell comes on. She has 2 months where she tours the country as part of her leadership campaign. She's getting fawning coverage. People are like, she's a woman. She's kind of progressive. She's new. She breathes new life in the. She springs ahead in the polls. And suddenly, Chrétien is yesterday's man. I remember sitting in the leader's office with the communications director for Chrétien, and he points at the TV, and there's footage of her at a barbecue, and he says, how big a problem do you think this is? And I said, well, I think it's a big problem. And he's like, yeah, me too. But the only thing we can do is wait for her to screw up. And she did. And I think if you're the Péquistes right now, you're like, let's not panic. Let's wait for them, pick somebody, screw up, and then make certain that they bear all the sins of the predecessor.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, and I've asked this question as well, and maybe this is a bit, early to be asking this, but one of the issues that had come up would be not only if François Legault would resign, but maybe would call an early election. The election here is not till October. Does this make that more or less likely, do you think?
Probably no change, in my opinion. I think, there's a fixed date. There's such a narrow window now, so you're going to end up with, I think, a leadership in, what would the earliest of it be? Probably May, June, July, somewhere in that window. Then you probably want to take the summer season, try to use good weather and high hopes, freshness, and, do a barbecue circuit and have one big long campaign, and then you pop into the election, right? For the beginning of October. So, to rush the election earlier on the basis of trying to get a post-convention bounce, not going to get, you won't have much time. It will be a post-convention bounce, basically, because Legault has left it so late. So, the only thing, and this is a parallel to Carney, is that if for some reason, this leadership race draws people's attention and excites voters, then you end up with a situation where if somebody can come in and put a new coat of paint on the party, there's not a lot of time for Saint-Pierre Plamondon to react to it, right? And we saw how tough it was for Poilievre to figure out how to respond to a shifting sands. I doubt that's going to happen, but we did see it happen, I think, 11 months ago.
Just to wrap up, a couple of things that we were talking to a CTV reporter about the Mark Carney trip to China. So, yes, he's there. Scott Moe happens to be there, surprisingly, I guess at the same time. What do you see actually happening here? Because we've talked around this and through this for the past few days now. There's a lot at stake here. So he can't come back with nothing, he being the prime minister. What do you see happening here, Scott?
If I was going to bet $100, I would say that you will see a schedule of reciprocal diminished tariffs on canola and agricultural goods for Canada and on Chinese EVs. Instead of being at 100%, they'll get dropped to 65%. I'm picking a number out of my rear end. But you'll see some diminution of those tariffs and a commitment to a structural dialogue on trying to move forward, all that sort of stuff. You'll probably also see a series of other commitments on investments. And in particular, the easy thing for us is to get them to buy our energy, get us, more LNG, more oil, even if it's, down the road sort of stuff. So you'll see, I think, all of those kinds of things. Carney will have enough to work with. The question is, he can't have too much on that. You can't have too much of reciprocal diminution of tariffs without triggering intra-Canadian tensions with Doug Ford and bilateral tensions with Donald Trump. So I think that's what we'll get, and people will probably a week from now be going, man, you know what? I think the guy sort of sawed the magician's assistant in half and sort of hit just the right balance. That would be my guess is what's going to happen.
We'll wait and see. All right, Scott, thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This
is bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.